Okay, all right. Hey everyone, I hope everyone is enjoying the lunch. You're in for a real treat with our next speaker. Tambra Raye Stevenson is the founder and CEO of WANDA, Women and Girls Advancing Nutrition, Dietetics, and Agriculture. She's creator of Native Soul Kitchen. She's a member of the DC Food Policy Council and a communications scholar. Many of you will recall Tambra from the last year's conference when she was a speaker on our Rethinking Hunger panel. She places her advocacy at, quote, the intersection of food, culture, and spirituality. And like many of us, she's adept at pointing out the limitations of what's wrong with the standard American diet, but she also has a unique vision for fostering healthier and more sustainable diets by leveraging traditional African culinary traditions. I'm sorry, this is not what you asked me to say in my introduction, Tambra, but I have so many of my own things, great things to say about you. It really is. I mean, if all of you that were here at our last event remember Tambra. I mean, just one of the most charismatic speakers we've had at this event in a long time. She's got a book coming out, which she's going to talk to us about. She's going to talk to us about the Food Bill of Rights and all the exciting advocacy that she's involved in. It's really an honor to have Tambra Raye Stevenson with us today. Thank you.
So I'm glad you all ate, so I don't have to stand between you and lunch like the last panel did. So, wow. So imagine just a year ago, I was here with you all with a dynamic panel, and now here with you as a solo. So I definitely feel like Beyonce from Destiny's Child, and with Cowboy Carter coming from Oklahoma and Texas. Like I feel like 2024 is my year, right? So with that, I just want to say I'm truly honored to come before you today at the Consumer Federation of America's National Food Policy Conference. And I wanted to have us to reflect a moment, if we can go to the next slide. Imagine if our food system is a prestigious members-only supper club. But here's the catch. We're all members, but some have platinum or copper status. Whether we realize it, which results in different experiences, we engage with the club whenever we grow food, we buy groceries, or we eat at the table or not. However, are we using our membership to its fullest potential or letting others dictate the terms? So I invite you to ponder on a simple yet profound question. Who should hold the power to enter, engage, and eat at this supper club? It is the few, the powerful, and privileged who dictate who lands at the table, or is it going to be you, the food citizen, demanding a seat at the decision-making table? So today we embark upon a journey to reclaim our power, our voice, and the right to a healthy, nourishing food for all. But I want to share a little bit about my background. Next slide. I forgot I have a clicker. So I wanted to share how my rise to becoming a food citizen began long before I ever stepped foot here in Washington, D.C., but it began in the heartland of America that shaped my values, that still instilled with me today, and that I put into my children of faith, food, family, fellowship, freedom, and football, of course. Go Cowboys. So growing up in Oklahoma, food was more than just sustenance. It was a cornerstone of our community and culture. When I think about my grandmother and my dad, who his birthday was yesterday, he would have been 70, but unfortunately in 2007 he died in a head-on collision on Easter Sunday. So this is a special week for me because his birthday is April 4th, but he died on the 1st. So I felt like the fool. So my family, when I think about our family kitchen table and going to my grandmother's or to the local farmer's market with her, and how I learned early on the importance of nutritious food and promoting health and vitality, I think about what generational cycles that we're breaking. The tale of both of my grandmothers, Minnie Mae, who died in her 70s, she had complications of diabetes is how she died. She was a chain smoker. She had a sedentary lifestyle. But I now understand that she was actually dealing with childhood trauma, and that's how she healed. But my other grandmother, who lived right around the corner, also has diabetes, battled strokes, outlived her husbands, her son, and is still young at age 97. She was a nurse at OU Medical for 35 years, pediatric and geriatric. But I never grew up with my mom, my father, or my grandmother, and didn't learn about them really until later in life. And so coming full circle, reconnecting them to my children, Elliot and Ruby, that's my Aunt Berlinda, who, like my father, was part of the first color line broken in the Oklahoma City Fire Department, where he cooked food, and I really learned about appreciating good nutrition from him. So this is my grandma, Ruby. I went to visit her last year and did a film project, and this image that you see here is a children's book that I created in really the start of creating WANDA, and it was really trying to imagine if I was that food she wrote, how could I have healed my grandma from diabetes using cultural foods coming out of Nigeria, as I trace my heritage back to the Fulanis, and have since went back to start programs there. And then there were critical moments in my life that really had me answer the call of being this food citizen. One was when Michelle Obama came into office, and like many of us in the room, we were inspired not only as a mother, a wife, but also as just someone who cared enough for our children to think about what are they eating every day. And this is my daughter, Ruby, at the United States of Women Summit that she had the opportunity to see Michelle Obama at the time, and who's now my Chief Inspiration Officer at WANDA. And so going back to Abuja for the first time, I wanted to create an organization that really created a pipeline of women and girls who can become the food heroes that our community needs, from farm to health. And so when we created the book, we created in the local language, Hausa, to make sure that it was accessible to the local community, and also highlighted their food culture and really representation of women like Salamatu Garba, who is growing food, but also growing food heroes in northern Nigeria, which we now have created an endowed scholarship funding college women in agriculture, nutrition, and dietetics in Kano, Nigeria. And it has been an honor to be able to create an organization to bridge from the heartland to the motherland, this vision of, if you've ever seen Color Purple, the scene when Whoopi Goldberg is going across the field, reconnecting to her sister, this is what I envision with WANDA. How do we as women begin to see the power of food to build bridges, to build community, but also create the change that we want to see for ourselves and for others? And that starts with education of ourselves, our families, but also advocating for the change when we realize the constraints of society and our environments don't allow us to be the true food hero to our fullest potential of who we are, and the need to innovate, and understanding the role of entrepreneurship in this space and why we uplift and celebrate those who are food heroes in our community. And so when we do programs in Nigeria or Kenya or wherever, we make sure that we fund women who are the food heroes, who are the caterers, to make sure that people are eating the food that they know, not plumpy nut only for severe malnourished communities, but to understand, like, you know, your food like fonio or millet, unjama jama, bitter leaf, tuwo, kuka, all these dishes are equally as nutritious and part of your culture and part of your healing. And so as a food citizen, for me, that meant also writing that story. It's not enough to do the work, but now document the work. Last year, I had the opportunity to be the featured guest editor at Eating Well, to do one of their largest pieces on uplifting the African heritage diet as medicine. They gave me full creative control, from the visuals to the copy to picking the talent of nutritionists, of chefs, of historians, to really create a dynamic piece that's now up for a James Byrd Award this year. You can scan the QR code to check the article out, but you can also Google and it should come up immediately. But in this article, we were able to launch a Black food census, begin to collect data, leveraging my degree currently at American University in their PhD in Media Technology Democracy program, about how can we begin democratizing nutrition education? How do we democratize how Black food representation shows up on our digital apps and in our media and in our books? And right now, there's a limitation when we think about the lost crops of Africa that was created by the National Academies of Science. It's talked about African foods as these hidden, forbidden foods, marginalized, almost omitted. And if we think about the potential of unlocking the local food economy and for everyone to show up at the table of food democracy, our foods are not present when we think about the food as medicine movement. I want to change that, and that's what we're doing when we launched our Food as Medicine, the Black Community Initiative last December, conducting roundtables and working to create a summit to gather leaders to understand that generational health also means generational wealth for our communities. For the last 4 years, we've been conducting the Sisterhood Supper celebration. It was a way in which, during the pandemic, that we found an opportunity to build community around food and local community, especially as people were coming back from the pandemic. How were we finding ourselves not feeling awkwardly socially, but feeling as if we truly are at a table and to know that our sisterhood is our medicine? And for the last 3 years, I've seen the trend. More women are coming, they're bringing their children, they're bringing their husbands, their partners, because we know that when you bring a woman, she brings the community. And it brings us to the opportunity of understanding that I want to show them we're not simply consumers, but we're also producers. And so we highlight women who are these hidden figures in our food system. Women like Chef Marley, who's a chef and a farmer operating on some of the lands that UDC owns, growing food, and she has such a charismatic spirit. Or Erin, who runs the DMV Black Restaurant Week, understanding that we have to uplift restaurants at a time that they're really being hit hard here in the city. Or when we think about Francille, who's a dietitian, who not only has a private practice and work in government, but also gives back to her community and supports the work of WANDA. And so many others who have not always had platforms, but we create the platforms so they can shine their light for others to see and be inspired. And so this is last year's Sisterhood Supper, just some of the women who've been able to come to the program. We've captured at this point 100. We'll be moving from Ward 8 to Ward 7 to host the next one. And we use it as an opportunity to not only launch WANDA Week, which is proclaimed by Mayor Bowser, but it also is an opportunity for us to secure funding through our Food Shiro Freedom Fund in order to create more scholarships for women here in America, but also in Africa. The other part for me being a food citizen is giving back in the classroom. This is one of our food journalism classes at American University that Christine, who's a fellow LADAM member, taught. And to be able to go into the classroom and make these connections, it also gives me an opportunity to promote our work and find interns and create field experiences. And at this, currently we've had both Howard University and American University students assist our work, giving them meaningful field experiences, showing that beyond theory, how they can really make a social impact and give them the experience that they need to secure a job in the future. And so I had 2 students paired up between Howard and HBCU, and American present at Georgetown just 2 weeks ago at their Democracy Governance Symposium on the Food Bill of Rights from data that we collected from developing a food democracy study 2 years ago that garnered more than 1,000 respondents that said 90% agreed that we believe and need a Food Bill of Rights in this country, with the top 3 grievances mentioned was affordability of healthy food access, but also the need to address wasted food, and also and those two were tied together as number 1. And the third was sustainability in packaging was another critical issue, as we saw brought up by COP28 last year in Dubai. And so we have pushed forward this idea of a Food Bill of Rights in the policy report to the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. And in it, we laid out a roadmap of some of the gaps and blind spots and really having an intersectional lens. As a Black women-led organization, the importance of having a number of people seated at the table, that we bring up issues that one may not have thought of. And one of the things I realized coming out of the pandemic was this idea that the UN Declaration of Human Rights, the key part of right to food, is something that has never been codified in law in this country, nor right to health, which is why we're not number 1 like Japan by WHO when it comes to universal health care coverage. And so one has to think, why is that? Why are we reluctant as this so-called superpower with so much resources, not willing to feed our people and heal our people in order to produce a productive, healthy workforce and productive schools for our children to grow? So the Food Bill of Rights is a framework that has been crafted using a public health approach, understanding that if we think of ourselves like the armed forces, we have Army, Navy, we have Marines, and we have Air Force. If we lay it on the food system, we have chefs, we have farmers, we have nutritionists, we have health providers, and all those who are allied food forces in our system. And as someone who's been a born national security scholar, I thought about how nutrition security is national security, because if you have hungry people, they go to war. Food brings peace. If it didn't, we wouldn't have USAID programs literally called Food for Peace. And so these articles can be seen as 7 days of a week. You can reflect and think, how are we shaping and thinking about our value systems as a country? I believe this is something that should be a preface to the Farm Bill as a resolution, but also adopted by local food policy councils that may not have an existing framework that can use it as a way to guide their working groups, and then go through the process operationalizing it by looking at legislation that falls under these 7 buckets. Many Bill of Rights that have been crafted and moved forward either focus on farm workers or restaurant workers, but not singularly looking at how we are a collective system working together, just like our body. We don't have arms going one way, legs going the other. We should all be working together in one uniform fashion, hence the need to think about how we are connecting people, planet, as well as prosperity, and giving that to access to everyone who believes that they are seeing themselves as a food citizen. And if they're not, we want to talk about how do you begin to see yourself from not just a foodie, but a food citizen. And so you can go to the website, foodbillofrights.org, that has officially launched today. But I wanted to talk about what's at stake if we're not food citizens. And to be clear, I also want to talk about, what do you think is a food citizen? I began to think about this concept working as a food policy council member here in DC, which my term is up. If anyone's a DC resident, I highly recommend you apply at moda.dc.gov, because we're looking for a few good food citizens. But I thought about, what does it even mean to be a food citizen? Being a food citizen is more than making healthy food decisions at the grocery store. It's about recognizing the power that each of us holds to shape our food system and our communities. It's about understanding that food is not just a commodity, but it's a fundamental human right. It means recognizing our role and responsibility in shaping the system that sustains us, and understanding that our daily choices, from what we eat, where we shop, have far-reaching implications for our health, our communities, and our planet. And central to the commitment of a food citizen is the concept of a food bill of rights, a visionary framework providing a roadmap on how do we transform our food system at the federal and local levels, and declaring that every person has the right to access affordable, nutritious food free from discrimination and exploitation. And it recognizes that food is more than just calories, but it's identity, it's our livelihood, it's our nourishment, it's our dignity, it's empowerment. And so, as American citizens, we have the rights and responsibilities defined by the laws of this land. The right to vote, which I hope you're registered. We got a critical year ahead of us. And freedom of speech, and the responsibility to obey the laws of the land. And as a food citizen, we may not have the legal rights in the same way, but we have a responsibility to make informed food choices that promote the health, sustainability, and social justice. But also being a food citizen is more than just personal and community-based commitment, but also understanding that food is a reflection of our values and our practices, whether it's from reducing food waste to supporting local farmers or advocating for food justice. And food citizens may participate from a range of activities, from community gardening to food cooperatives to advocacy for food policy reform and supporting sustainable agriculture. But from the global to local focus, depending on your issues, we may see a food citizen be concerned about global food security, fair trade practices, environmental impact of our food production. When we understand that there's a lot at stake. And that when we risk using our membership to this supper club, we perpetuate unhealthy food environments that lead to rates of diet-related diseases, such as obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. We contribute to unsustainable ag practices. We perpetuate systems that weaponize food that Frederick Douglass highlighted in his memoir published in 1855, My Bondage, My Freedom, about liquor flowing like liberation in order to make sure that those of African descent who were enslaved did not escape the plantation during the holidays. We perpetuate systems that lack the resilience and need to address nutrition insecurity and food sovereignty. So I want to have you to think about, what does it mean to say, I am a food citizen? Can you say it with me? I am a food citizen. I am a food citizen. Because if you're at this conference, everybody in this room should be singing it to the ceiling that you are a food citizen. And what that means involves that you can join a food policy council and how to be an active food citizen, helping to push forward the Food Bill of Rights framework, signing the petition to having the Food Bill of Rights, sharing your story in the book that we are producing around a Food Citizens Guide, voting with your fork and at the polls for candidates who support the food policies that we need in this country and in our communities, taking a friend and family member with you, and researching the candidate platforms on how they see these issues and hold them accountable with forums before, during, and after the election, and also involving yourselves in voter registration drives. For instance, I'm on the board of NAACP DC branch. We ensure that we are ensuring that people are getting to the polls before they get there, they're registered. So I want you to think about looking ahead. What must we prioritize in critical areas in advancing food citizenship and transforming the food system? We have to implement policies and initiatives that build strong nutrition security, promoting regenerative ag, prioritizing efforts to help address systemic inequalities, and enhancing nutrition education across fields, and fostering community-driven solutions. And so when we think about these benefits, we should have the right, just as anyone else, to access to healthy foods and make sure that we have that for everyone. And being a food citizen recognizes our power and agency. And the fight for food freedom is far from over. As we look ahead to the future, we must look at how do we advance a food democracy where everyone participates in their local food economy. So let us rise together and embrace our role as food citizens to build solidarity and a collective identity. We must recognize that elections matter before, during, and after, and that our voices can shape the policies that govern our food system. We must transform our kitchen tables into tables of food democracy where every voice is heard and every person is valued. We must recognize our power and responsibility in shaping the system and holding those in these positions accountable that say they represent our interests. Let us build a future where everyone can have access, and I want to leave you with this one thought. We are members of this food system supper club, and we hold that membership for future access. If we don't actively use our benefits and exercise our right as food citizens, we risk forfeiting those rights to the highest bidder. But if we come together, demand change, and advocate for food justice and equity, we can transform our food system into one that nourishes us all, especially in nourishing the next generation of food citizens. So let's put the P in power to the people by feeding the people. So please join me in building a better table for all. Sign up at foodbillofrights.org, share your story for the Food Citizens Guide, come to our Sisterhood Supper for Juneteenth, and I want to thank you for having me today.